Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this very, very special presentation, a conversation we thought we must have with right-thinking minds who will present to us the right perspective about what happened in Lok Sabha 2024, looking back and also looking ahead. What's the road ahead for Bharat given the current scenario? Are we on track with the Viksit Bharat vision? Let's go straight across to Dr. Anand Ranganathan, author, scientist, political commentator, Sushant Sareen, member ORF, contributor, commentator, Professor Nachiketa Tiwari, professor with IIT Kanpur and also very actively works with the International Vishwa Hindu Parishad, and Ratan Shardaji, RSS thinker, author and a commentator whose latest article has got a lot of people thinking and a lot of people commenting and introspecting. First up, Namaste and Jai Hind, gentlemen. Thank you very, very much. And I'd like to start with all of you giving us briefly your takeaways from Lok Sabha 2024. How would you assess it, understand it? 3 or 4 takeaways individually, and then we'll take the conversation forward. So let's start with Professor Nachiketa Tiwari. Yeah.
Okay. So in context of the Lok Sabha elections, the way I look at it in the larger perspective, I mean, I'm not going to talk about who won how many seats and all that, because that has been an overdone thing. But the broad theme I am seeing over last several elections, and it's only getting worse every cycle of elections, is that they have become extremely acrimonious. And we are entering into a new era where anything, if you get to power, is okay. So getting to the power is a justification by itself. And in that process, what is lost is that what is the good which is coming out for the country, for the people of this wonderful land of ours, and what are the positive things which can come out through these election cycles. But in that particular context, I also see a ray of light in the context of, this alignment which has happened between Telugu Desam, JDU, and BJP. And I hope that I'm not wrong and time will not prove me wrong, that at least maybe this is a ray of hope, that there's not a lot of blackmailing which is going on, that, oh, I am going to support you if you do this, or I'm going to support you if you give me these positions, and so on and so forth. So what I'm hearing from general media and my perception is that here is Mr. Naidu. He's focused on Telugu on his state. He wants to bring to a fruition and he wants to develop that state, and that is providing him the bedrock of aligning with the center. A similar thought process I'm seeing emerge is in context of Bihar, that you have Nitish Yadav. He wants to do some good. Maybe this may be his last chance, and he wants to leave a legacy for himself. And maybe some new reality is dawning upon him that, okay, I'm not going to do the same good old trick which conventional politicians have done. So this is another thing. And of course, there's this BJP. So this is one broad theme which is emerging. And I hope this theme stands out and bears the testimony of time.
Right.
And
interesting point that you say that anything to win and acrimonious, that's what we are seeing, and that's a trend. Right. Dr. Ranganathan, your thoughts, takeaways?
Hi Anand, and good evening to everyone, fellow panelists. I think it's a wonderful discussion. I have briefly, I think, starting with 2 points to make. Number one, of course, it is very difficult to surmise in a couple of minutes what exactly I would want Lok Sabha 2024 to deliver. But I think it can be succinctly divided in 2 parts. One, what the opposition does not want the government to do, and what it hopes the government will not do. And second, what the opposition wants India to be like, but it does not want the government to do for it to make India to be like that. And I'm specifically talking of 2 statements out here. Number one deals with economy. Crore people want India to be developed country as fast as possible. But for that, we have to take hard decisions. Now, the opposition says, yes, Indian economy should grow, keep growing, and we want it to grow. But is it ready to take hard decisions? No, it isn't. In fact, Prime Minister Modi has been blessed over the last term because, all the decisions that he's taken against economic growth have been supported by the opposition. I talk about complete zero privatization. I talk about repeal of farm laws. These are the tough decisions that would catapult us to a developed economy, at least put us on the road firmly. But the opposition doesn't want it. So I think it's going to be very difficult to navigate that stream. Having said that, including the fact that there would be no privatization or very little privatization, including the fact that I don't believe there would be another slew of farm reforms, or at least those 3 farm bills will come again. I think we would still keep growing incrementally, not growing with the speed I would like, but we would keep growing. So I think that augurs well. Plus, what Nichiketa ji said about Chandrababu Naidu, I think he's more of a reformer than Narendra Modi. So I think that team augurs very well going ahead. Very briefly, the second thing that I talked about, which the opposition doesn't want to happen and doesn't believe should happen, are the reforms whereby there are cultural, social. They are the ones where I want, and I said it yesterday, in fact, in a tweet that's gone viral, that I would want discrimination against Hindus to end. I would want the Waqf Act to go. I would want the Places of Worship Act to go. I would want the Right to Education Act to be amended so that only Hindus are not held carrying the can for 25% reservations. I would want the state control over temples to go, because it's not just the long run, it is even the short run. It's going to make India suffer, because if Hinduism suffers, India suffers. But I don't think the opposition wants it, and I don't think the Prime Minister has enough power. I would love to believe that he has, and it will go ahead and do these reforms, remove discrimination against Hindus. But I don't believe that's possible, sadly.
Sushant Sareen.
So, Anand, a couple of things. One, I don't disagree with what Professor Nachiketa said, but I think Indian politics has always been acrimonious. But, it's like, it is India. So, you have acrimonious politics, but you also have a sense of decency in politics, something which we saw in Odisha yesterday when the swearing in was taking place. That culture seems to be dying down a bit, but we've always had acrimonious politics. And frankly, one of the reasons for greater acrimony nowadays is because the competitiveness in politics is much more. In the old days when the Congress was the dominant party, the other parties really didn't stack up much against the Congress. So there was a limit to how much acrimony you could do. You could have some people say what they had to say. But, beyond a point, there wasn't much space for much acrimony. Now, because of the competitiveness of politics, you will have greater acrimony. Now, again, in the past, whatever it takes to win elections was the norm. It has always been the norm. So when you had people, use gundas and loot ballot boxes and intimidate people, some of it which we have seen in some states, even in this election, both pre-election and post-election, the kind of pogroms that have been carried out in some states in the past as well, that's always been there. That's been there in the past. That's there even now. But that does not, distract us from the larger democratic project which is there in India. But having said that, I think my takeaways in this election is it's busted that very pernicious propaganda of the North-South divide. And frankly, had the BJP, maybe in the next election, they will put in a little more effort, manage their politics a little better, especially in Tamil Nadu and some other states, maybe their numbers are going to go up even more. In fact, numbers can only go up from here. They can't go down. So I think that North-South propaganda has been busted. Secondly, and this is something which we have to recognize, I see a much greater polarization both along ideological lines. Because earlier, it used to be said when Vajpayee ji was the Prime Minister that, it is basically the same variant of the same ideology and philosophy. Now, the ideological lines are far sharper than what they were in the past. The second disturbing trend is that the amount of fear-mongering in this particular election, that your reservations will be taken away, that the constitution will be scrapped, that dictatorship will be institutionalized, that's nonsense, but it has worked. right? That propaganda was nonsense. But the fear factor is there, and fake news is here to stay, as is meddling and interference in our electoral process from abroad. If anybody tells me that what the foreign media has been doing since about 2021 is only a coincidence, it's just the ideological predilections of individuals and of newspapers, that there is this sustained and vile campaign against Indian democracy, against the Indian political system, against the ruling party in India, I think that's nonsense. It was clearly a form of interference and meddling in the political process in India. And then finally, I think where I disagree with my friend Anand is, he is right up to a point that many of the reforms, and he is a man in great haste. He has very revolutionary fervor when it comes to economic things and other stuff. India is not a revolutionary country. In India, change comes, but change comes at its own pace. And politics being the art of the possible, I don't think we can rule out privatization. I think you need to work around, you need to develop, you need to do greater politicking around privatization. You need to do greater politicking around economic reforms to make them more palatable. Perhaps if the farm laws has been a little more consultative, maybe they could have come in one form or another, maybe not in the shape that they were brought in, maybe in some other shape. But I don't completely rule out the potential for much greater economic reforms simply because you have a coalition government. You'll have to do work around, you'll have to, do some jiggery-pokery, which is what politics is all about. But I don't entirely rule them out. And I'm quite hopeful that we will see many more reforms, including, I hope, some taxation reforms, because frankly, last 10 years, I have given up hope of any kind of taxation reforms in this country.
Right.
I'm quite sure that for the next 5 years also, I'm going to be disappointed, but what can we do?
There'll be a lot of people who
Just 30 seconds. Can I just interject for just 30 seconds before Ratan and
Ratan Chadha
very quickly. I think people like Sushant Sareen and Ambani ji don't need to worry about tax reforms because they are millionaires and billionaires. Couple of Sushant is absolutely right about the north-south divide being completely busted, because just to add data to that, BJP has got more votes in the south than the Congress has. But on the other side, slight disagreement with Sushantji. I don't think there'll be any economic reforms, because in the last 10 years, the only thing that has been privatized is Air India. And the opposition, and when you say that, farm reform should have been consulted more, well, for 16 years, there were consultations and they were in the manifestos almost verbatim of every opposition party. So nobody would have thought that the same opposition parties would take a U-turn and oppose the very farm reforms that they were advocating for.
See, the simple point is that the opposition believes they deserve to do all of this, not the current government or the ones that have been voted to power. How can they do what we think we thought we will do? So we will not let them do. That's another thought process. But Ratan Chadha ji, your thoughts.
Before Ratan ji comes, give me my 30 seconds.
फिर आप 30 सेकंड में रतन जी बोल ही नहीं पाएंगे, उनको बोलने दीजिए, फिर we'll take it forward.
उसके बाद 30 minutes to Ratan ji.
अच्छा ठीक है, ले लीजिए.
See, this is where politics happens in this country, right? The BJP opposed GST. When the BJP came in, they brought in GST, right? People will oppose things because that is what they think is the opposition dharma, which it clearly is not. Opposition dharma is not to simply oppose mindlessly, but that is the way politics has been structured in this country. So I don't entirely believe. I think just because something is put in the manifesto does not mean anything. You have to be able to bring people around to be able to deliver it, especially if it is a very far-reaching kind of a reform. I hope this government is able to do that. And now I'm going to keep quiet.
Jay, I think the ground-up mahal has to be built. Had that been done ground-up across the various states, and then a mood coming in from the Kisan and the Sangatans itself before the repeal happened or before the farm laws came into place, there is an argument which says you did not spend enough time. You just rushed through it because you were in a hurry. Some things cannot be rushed through. But Ratan Chadha ji, thank you for your patience. Your thoughts? Takeaways.
Well, we Swayamseks are always oppressed since 1947-48. So these right-wingers will definitely, oppress me. I'll try to make some points. See, there are stars. We are just plodders. So coming to the main point, see, first of all, I mean, this most important issue as everybody's pointed out is end of North-South divide stories. It's very important. And in the Tamil Nadu also, if you see votes from 4% to 10%, and Annamalai going all guns blazing, and EDMK, ADMK, whatever you call them, slowly going down, next election will see a huge change. See, speciality of BJP is that if once they put a foot in the door, they are able to open the door in any state. If you recall the politics of Gujarat, when BJP was a minor player in Janata Front, it became the dominant force. In Maharashtra, struggling very hard, slowly came to the top. Goa, they took away entire MGP and became the dominant force. Karnataka, there are JDS, there was Congress, and BJP slowly made space for itself. So that will happen. But whether it's Telangana, whether Sandhra, and the most surprising part like Odisha, were plotting for many years, finally BJP found the opportunities. I'm very sure that South will see rise of BJP.
Right.
One. Secondly, important point is that in Andhra Pradesh, we see freebie politics has failed. When I was talking to during the election time, I was talking to one of the Andhra intellectual who meddles in politics part time. He said, Ratanji, I can tell you, the Jagan cannot be defeated because he has got entire women population behind him with large number of freebies in some excuse or other, right from girl child to widow to unemployed, etc., etc. He said 1 lakh crores were taken from the center just to pay these freebies. So you can't defeat him. But see, next morning you see that this freebie culture failed. Why did it fail? Because you saw in CBN a reformist who was a genuine reformist. And the way he had struggled for last 5 years. So another lesson is that if you struggle hard on the ground for people, people come back to you. And I've seen his struggle. I had a talk with him. And he was very persistent and he was around even during COVID times to struggle for Amravati and struggle for other reforms. Further, I would like to say to what he talked about, there is a certain contempt for middle class and MSME. We keep on lauding them that MSME is the heart of economy, and we know they are heart of economy. But when it comes to compliance, I do not understand how a 10 crore company can have the same compliance as a 10,000 crore company. They don't have the people, they don't have the money, resources to comply with the same stiff regulations which the large companies have. So can something be done? Senior citizens discount removed in railways. It didn't hurt much. It was just 500 crore or 500,000 crores compared to lakhs of crores of budget. And this time, my tweet gathered a lot of steam when I said, this time, please look at the lower end of the railway passengers who are not getting facilities, and everybody could echo in that,
Correct.
So that is another important part that they have to look at. And as far as Congress is concerned, I'm happy that Congress survived and thrived a bit and becoming the opposition party. The sad part is, this is not the Congress that Congress was. It was a national party with inclusive party. You find it has been hijacked by JNU left loonies. It has been hijacked by extreme left, having tasted blood by dividing people into caste, into Amir Admi, Garib Admi, upper caste, lower caste, and all that. Rahul will be smelling blood and he will carry on the same stories as you see what he has done after the election also. He's not going to compromise. And he's going to carry the same narrative, which is very hurtful to the society. Another factor is that AI and use of fake news and AI, which has not been delegitimized, which has not been questioned by anybody, even on media, only we keep on talking about and not much action taken. This can be hugely problematic for the Indian society, where people believe very easily if it comes on radio or on YouTube, whatever.
Let me make a point here. You've
Another
talked
what Anand said, another point, right to education 93rd Amendment, which is highly discriminatory for majority community. So everybody wants to be minority. From 750 minorities, this right to education converted 2,000 people into minority community. Everybody wants to become minority because they want to run their education institution. So should the load of taking care of economically disadvantaged, caste disadvantaged people be carried only by Hindus? So these are the issues that also need to be addressed. I wrote an article, 11 steps for 11th year of Modi ji. I also did an article which said, let us return to sane politics 4 days before the election ended.
Let's just park this core ideological issues.
Last point.
And we'll come back to a longer chat on
just
it.
Last point. See, this lack of conversation with the people, stakeholders, for example, about farm policy, 80% to 90% farmers supported BJP. They came on TV, supported BJP, but BJP could not utilize their services, could not put them up. So people understand that majority of farmers want the reforms. They simply kept quiet. They did not promote any of these people who were pro-farmer. Even the Ticket family, who was actually said, it is my father's dream fulfilled. He turned negative because nobody approached him. So this point, non-communication people are who are with you can be a problem. So you have to open up your mind and open your hearts for others.
We'll talk about the core ideological issues and the communication issues just in a bit. I just want to take this conversation forward while highlighting one aspect. This aspect of technology and how to regulate it and how to reform it and how to take punitive action is a huge concern. I'll tell you, for the last three and a half months on Meta platforms and on X, an interview that I did on Vantara with Anant Ambani has been twisted, turned, and multiple templates of multiple platforms have been used. There is legal action that's been taken by the company, by Reliance. Everybody is taken, by Network 18, they've taken legal action. But they still continue to circulate. You've not been able to stop it. So that means technology is far ahead of your ability to regulate it right now. There is a serious problem. And I'm just parking it there, that this is one of the policy issues that the government today has to focus on. But let's try and take this conversation forward before we come to the core ideology and from core ideology to communication and core Hindutva agenda per se. What went wrong with the BJP? And why did the voter vote the way they did in Ayodhya and Varanasi? So let's take this together and let's open it up. Yes, Nachiketa ji, let's start with you.
Yeah. So, okay, so what went wrong? So I looked at some basic data for Uttar Pradesh, because among all the states, Uttar Pradesh, the results in Uttar Pradesh have led to this new situation. Yeah. So when you look at those data, what essentially you find is that you break up the whole electorate into 3 or 4 segments. So you have general population or general castes. The vote share doesn't change. Then you have the Yadavs. It doesn't change much. Then you have the Muslims. It doesn't change much. I mean, there were a very little number of Muslims who supported BJP last time, 2019, same thing. There were 2 differentiators. One is the scheduled castes, primarily the non-Jat of scheduled castes. Their vote share went down from 60% to 30%. Now, UP has a very large number of SC population in the state, about 22%. And out of those, half of those people are in the non-Jatav class. So 60% voted from this group in 2019. This time it's 30%. And then to some extent, the non-Yadav OBC vote share also went down. So these are the 2 important markers. Now, what went wrong? I mean, it's a very large election. We are talking about a state of 24 crore people. What I have understood based on several interactions with a lot of persons here are there were a multiplicity of factors. I've also interacted with individuals belonging to these communities, some community leaders from these sections specifically. But 2 or 3 things come out very clearly when you talk, and these themes come again and again and again. One is there is significant agrarian distress. There is significant agrarian distress, and no one can doubt that. I mean, it's difficult. That is one reason why Narendra Modi was very conscious of this, and it didn't explode into a very big issue that you have this 5 kilogram of anaj, being assured for next 5 years. Very significant distress. And the second one is there's very significant problem of unemployment, or more effectively, I will say underemployment. You have groups, graduate students below the age of 25, 27, where unemployment rate is 30%, 35%. I mean, it's a significant number. It's just that the goodwill which NDA or particularly BJP which had in previous times, it was able to dilute the effect, but that's not going to last for too long a time. Now, in context of this unemployment problem, and this is not specific to BJP or Congress or to India itself, I'll give you 1, 2 or 3 very interesting pieces of data. So there's this thing called employment elasticity. And what it means is that if your growth if your GDP increases by 1%, and if your employment figures also increase by 1%, then you say that employment elasticity is 1. In context of India, this number was around 0.9 in 1990s. In 2000s, it fell down to about 0.7. In 2010, it fell down to 0.4. Today, it stands at 0.1, or maybe some people argue that it's negative, which essentially means that to grow your employment, number of employment database by 1%, you need a GDP growth of 10%. India's population itself every year grows by about 1%. Uttar Pradesh's population every year, it grows by 2.4, 2.5, 2.6%. So what essentially it means is, in context of Uttar Pradesh, the GDP has to grow by a monstrous 24% every year to handle this problem. This is one very unique problem which India is facing. And all these standard responses that we'll have privatization, I've looked at a lot of data, what is the employment elasticity of manufacturing sector, trading sector, and so on and so forth. A lot of this problem is primarily because there are very large number of folks who are migrating from agriculture to other areas because people don't make a decent living in the area of agriculture.
There's no money in farming and agriculture.
There's no money. The land holdings are extremely small. And the second big problem is that even in manufacturing areas, even in IT areas, there's high degree of automation, and that is also eliminating a lot of jobs.
So this
and now
rural
finally,
distress,
in context of IT, I will say in next 5 years, you will see a lot of employment opportunities. Even in IT will start evaporating because these artificial intelligence tools, they will start
AI-aided tools will come.
So they'll start creating.
But how do you pin Ayodhya and Varanasi? The Prime Minister winning by 1.5 lakh votes.
So what this tells
Ayodhya
me is
being lost, despite 5 lakh votes being polled by the BJP.
Yes, I'll address that. So this is a theme which runs across all constituencies in Uttar Pradesh. Then there were specific constituencies where people have argued that the candidate selection was not right, and there was internal strife and so on and so forth. And those 1 lakh khatakhat money disbursement assurance forms were given. Those are there. But this is a theme which runs across, and there is no reason to think why it will not affect Narendra Modi's constituency, or for that sake Hema Malini's constituency, or for that sake Smriti Irani's constituency. And this is a very important parameter. Unfortunately, Western economists don't have a hang of it because they have never solved this. They have never faced this kind of a problem in past.
True, but this agrarian distress should be there in Madhya Pradesh. It should be there in Bihar. It should be there in Uttarakhand and Himachal. But why UP, and especially after the Ram Mandir and Ram Lala Pran Pratishtha and the Mandir being built, and such a big thing, movement that happened and sentiment that happened in January, February, 3 months later, 4 months later, this kind of... Ratan Shardaji, have you been able to put a finger on this? One of the electoral data says that the entire vote transfer or consolidation of the opposition happened. All the Congress votes transferred to the SP candidate, and it consolidated there. The BSP pulled about 50,000 votes. The BJP continues to average the same 5 lakh votes in Ayodhya. But something did not work. It didn't extrapolate. It didn't get more votes because of the mandir being built.
No, but a lot of
Anand, I had
votes went to a non-BJP party, which is in this case Samajwadi Party.
Okay.
कुछ हमारे भी छोड़ते नचिकेत जी, हम भी कुछ बोल लें.
बताइए सर.
See, it is very clear that polarization was based on religion. And it was based on caste. It was based on casteist politics. There is no doubt at all about it. On one side, Muslims were consolidated, as they call it, in a very decent way, not polarization. Other way, Hindus were divided. And this whispering campaign that has gone is so vicious. I talked to a very senior RSS worker there.
So
he said, हमने सुना था कि जाति के साथ बांट रहे हैं. हमने सुना था कि ऐसे पोस्टर घूम रहे हैं और ये ऐसी बातें हुई थी, हमें पता नहीं था इतना गंभीर है. Secondly, a local person from UP said, my village people tell me that they came to our homes and said, ये आपको वापस ठाकुर और ब्राह्मण आपको जमीन पे बिठाएंगे, साथ के पलंग पे नहीं बिठाएंगे. Such vicious propaganda from lane to lane. And this fake videos are so seriously for BJP, which they could not turn it around. That SC/ST votes have gone tremendously down by nearly 9 to 10% against BJP. Their seats have gone down with 33. Congress has risen by 53 or 54. So this has worked very well. And of course, freebie is when you distribute coupons saying आके पैसे ले जाना 60,000 500 हर महीने 1 lakh etc. People fell over it because they signed with Rahul Gandhi. So this kind of polarization, very poisonous, because this will not end here because it has worked. So this is one of the biggest reasons. And secondly, in Ayodhya, they have won. In Kashi, they have lost some votes. As I said, this whispering campaign is so strong. I'm surprised that Congress had so many people in the lanes and the roads, which BJP could not detect. That is one of the most important reasons. And you talked about, जाति तोड़ो की बात करने वाले जो parties हैं, they are doing जाति जोड़ने के नाम पे जाति तोड़ने की राजनीति. So instead of demolishing caste, which was the original idea of Lohias, they have all become castes. So this caste factor also played very important role. And this polarization that is the result of that propaganda, nothing else, and BJP had to answer it or did not realize the seriousness of this whispering campaign that was carried on. Video vans were moving in the villages, spreading this wrong idea of the scheduled caste ka reservation jayega, they will lose reservation, and this constitution will be removed. All this propaganda has worked very well, and BJP could not find answer to this together. And that is one of the major issues. And very well-oiled campaign using international agencies, using international NGOs to spread this poison. That's a major reason for this loss.
Right. 400 पार equal to 2/3 बहुमत equal to संविधान बदल देंगे. So,
just add 2 sentences. Please permit me. Just 2 sentences. What Ratanji is arguing, I agree with it. This is on top of the foundation, which was the economic situation, and this primarily happened in Uttar Pradesh because they were focusing on Uttar Pradesh, as a true project manager, that this is where we want the biggest bang for the buck.
That's because 80 seats are returned. If the BJP is hurt there the most, by default it's a narrative.
That's right.
The population growth is so important that we are just sidelining it. We are not talking about it. We are not taking action. Population control की बात करते हैं, but we claim that we can. Our population is declining. But look at the water available and water required. For 19% world population, just 4% water. Even the farming, how long it will keep on supporting that population, and you are not able to divert agriculture. These issues are going to hurt, and these need immediately. Very important.
That's the policy. That's the policy aspect. I'll come to that. But this 400 par equal to 2/3 बहुमत equal to संविधान बदल देंगे. Sushant Sareen, and then I'll come to you, Dr. Ranganathan. So this has worked far more against the BJP, along with the BJP cadre itself getting perhaps a little complacent, a little arrogant, or perhaps overconfident, saying 400 par to ho hi raha hai. Did both of these compound, Sushant Sareen?
So, Anand,
and how do you read Ayodhya and Varanasi? Yeah, please.
Anand, this is one of the problems of elections, to my mind. People far bigger experts than I am on the panel, but let me give you my 2 bits. Look, somebody who's in power has to not only do everything right for 4 years and 9 months while he's in power, but also make sure that last 1 month before polling, nothing goes wrong for them. I think in the case of the BJP, there was definitely an element of arrogance and hubris and complacency, if you might, if you want to call it that this is a done deal already, right? Everybody was talking about it, and everybody seemed to assume that this is a done deal. And that hubris, because as Mr. Sharda says, that the BJP could not turn this around, this fake news propaganda. Had the BJP been cognizant of what was happening on the ground and not been flying high up in the air, they would have understood what is happening. Had they an ear to the ground, they would have understood what is happening, and they would have started coming up with workarounds, which is what they started doing after the first 2 rounds. When suddenly the Prime Minister changed gears and started talking about things which he did not talk in the first 2 phases, right? So clearly there has been a problem in terms of how they manage the political management, especially in UP. Now, it's all very, it makes for very good, it sounds very clever to say that, look, even in Ayodhya, the BJP lost, right? Which is utter nonsense, because somebody should tell me, have people voted against the Ram Temple? The Ram Temple wasn't on the ticket, right? It is not as though the BJP vote share has gone down. It is that there have been other factors which have jumped in to ensure, and Ayodhya has always been, or Faizabad, which was the seat earlier, has always been a bit of a marginal seat for the BJP. They won the last 2 times, but they've also lost it plenty of times. Even at the time when the Ayodhya movement was going on, they lost the seat plenty of times, right? So for somebody to say that, try and score a, clever point is okay. You want to be clever, fine, go ahead, do it. But I don't think anybody was voting against the Ram Temple, first and foremost. Number 2, it's all very well to talk about, and I think you raised this point also. Agrarian distress, yes, there is an element of agrarian distress, but agrarian distress is as much there, if at all there is, and I'm sure there is, in Madhya Pradesh, in Bihar, in parts of Rajasthan, but the elections have not been won or lost on that particular issue, right? Because other factors also jump in. And in the case of UP, they did not manage those other factors well. Now, one is hearing of problems within the party organization, of tussles within the party organization, in terms of candidate selection, wrong candidates were being picked up, anti-incumbency against local candidates, you never changed the candidates, you parachuted candidates in, people who had absolutely no connect with the workers were parachuted in, and this is part of that hubris factor which I was talking about. Thirdly, or fourthly, I've forgotten the count now, on this whole unemployment issue, problem is not just of unemployment. The problem is also of employability. How many of the people you are churning out of your universities or whatever goes for universities these days are employable? I can tell you that in many, many cases, even people from very well-known universities cannot write a paragraph to save their life in legible English or any other language. They are not employable, number 1. Number 2, this whole concept that employability is if you are employed in a company or in government, that is employment. Self-employed is not employability. Now, to the credit of Mr. Modi and his government, they came up with schemes so that people can be self-employed. When he was speaking about sell pakoras, I can show you pakoda walas who are multimillionaires. But look, people laughed at him. What is he talking about? You lampooned the Prime Minister at that point of time. But the fact of the matter remains that you have to start looking at employability also in terms of self-employability, right? That you do your own thing, you become entrepreneurs, even small level entrepreneurs. It's not necessary that you have to be cleaning a toilet in a big company and that is employment. If that is your definition of employment, then you're not going to get it. And finally, we have to start understanding the kind of investments and the kind of manufacturing activity which the Prime Minister is trying to attract or this government is trying to attract. You need to really double down on it. You need to not neglect the high tech spectrum, of the technology, but you also need to focus on the low. Why aren't we manufacturing Nike shoes? They create so much employment. Why aren't we manufacturing all kinds of other small stuff? The toys, the shoes, the shirts. We have destroyed our garments industry. Why have we done it? For what? Simply because everybody wants to do IT? That's stupid, isn't it? There is so much more that you can do to give employability or employment to people. But people also have to understand, just because you've got a BA degree from some godforsaken place does not mean that you are entitled to become Bill Gates.
So you're saying the focus or reiteration to reorientation towards labor-intensive manufacturing endeavors and policies have to be pushed without compromising on the high end. We are already a services destination. That's true. Yes, Anand Ranganathan. Before I get into 2 more important aspects which I'd like to cover in the final 15 minutes. Yes.
Yeah, very briefly, I mean, what Sushant Paji said is largely true, except for the fact that I don't think if you can't write a paragraph to save your life should go against employability, because most of those people who can't write a paragraph to save their lives are journalists in leftist ranks. So I think they are still employable. But a couple of points. I think what Professor Nichiketa said is very true, except that I don't think we are facing a catastrophe. I think the catastrophe is already here upon us, because we have a ready labor force of 592 million people. It's increased almost by 85 to 90 million people in the last 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. And 44% of them, Anand, are employed in agriculture. That contributes only 14% to our GDP. In the Western nations, it's hardly 2 to 3%. So there is no flexibility in our economy. And as you know, 95% of the farmers are not insured. 83% of households are dependent upon agriculture. It's a calamity. And that's why I keep going back on those farm reforms that now the government is not going to bring and the opposition doesn't want. The problem is we are stuck in this, you can say quicksand. It's very difficult to get out of. And finally, one small point of disagreement with Ratan Sharda ji. Ratan ji, as all of us know, the opposition was very clear. It had one point agenda: defeat Modi. It did not play by any rules, because if you have that agenda, everything is fair in hate and love and war. So for the BJP to now say, or anybody to say, look, they didn't play by the rules, they played rough. No, the BJP should have known that they have no rules, they have no scruples. They are going to basically just go for the jugular because they don't want Modi. All the dirty tricks they tried. So it is BJP's fault that they were not able to unearth all those dirty tricks, especially because they knew over the last 10 years, they have used those dirty tricks before.
Right. Now we've got exactly
Anand,
about 12. We've got about the.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you similar lines, but like I said, from viewing the same thing from a different prism or perhaps a slightly different perspective.
He has better language.
We have limited time. So 10 minutes, 12 minutes now. Two questions which are important, and I'd like to go through this. So 6 minutes between the four gentlemen for this one, and then I'll interrupt and then we'll go. So the aspect is, what happens within the neighborhood and the worldview at a time when the Prime Minister is, when we are having this conversation, he is away at G7, and we are seeing the LAC and the LOC and the borders, Pakistan, getting active, and a furtherance of certain level of trying to create strife within our territory. Now, how do we see this as a challenge? Will we be able to address it as boldly as in the past? Do you believe the world's perspective with us has changed? Dr. Ranganathan, let's start with you.
I think
I'll interrupt you in 90 seconds. Yeah.
Sorry, could you repeat that question, Anand?
No, I'm saying the worldview. Has the worldview towards Bharat now changed because of this? And will the neighborhood get increasingly volatile? Will they get aggressive against us?
I think let's be very honest about it. India, that has always projected, or mostly projected over the last 75 years, as itself being a soft power of dance, culture and everything. And not really concerned about being a hard power or not being able to. I think one has to become an economic superpower in order for all the other powers to be bestowed upon you. So in that sense, the world is going to get more murkier. It's going to get more against India, because nobody wants a strong economic power. But we have to, as someone said, that you have enemies. That means you're doing something good.
Good. So you have to become, and the world would try and press down and try and stop another economic power from shaping, but we've got to push through. Sushant Sareen?
Yeah, so look, I'm, on this issue, I am the kind of a guy who looks at the glass as half full or half empty. I'm very pessimistic about how the future is going to turn out on the international domain, simply because, look, the world is in a huge churn. And the next 5 years are going to bring the kind of headwinds that the last 10 years did not bring, right? The last 10 years, you saw some stirrings of that. But going forward, I think all the certainties of the past have been transformed into the uncertainties of the future. If you can't rely upon your so-called friends, many of whom were trying to meddle and interfere in your election process, whether in Europe or in the United States, they are not anti-India, but they're certainly not pro this government.
Okay.
And would like to keep pulling it down, keep pressurizing it, keep pushing it in a corner. keep targeting it in a way that these people are on the defensive, simply because what they want, they don't mind an India which becomes economically powerful, reasonably powerful, maybe not another China, but definitely much better than what it is right now. But they want it to be a subservient state.
Right.
They want to be obsequious to them. And if you're not ready to do it, then they're going to bring in all the pulls and pressures, especially because within your country, you have people, including senior opposition leaders, who go abroad and seek interference into India's affairs.
War, conflict always drains your treasuries, and that means that it will also hurt us economically. So the idea is once again to try and suppress it and keep us at check as a growing economic power. Ratan Shardaji.
One good thing that has happened in the election is continuity of Mr. Modi, because Narendra Modi ji guarantees, not in the political sense or election sense, that this continuity where he can play around with the international situation to the best possible way to exploit it for India. One. Secondly, his close connection and relations with nearly every important world leader plays another important part. So that relief is there definitely. Yes, world wants Modi, but world wants a weak Modi, not an assertive Modi. For that reason, they will be very happy with the alliance government. But I can tell you, if Congress was to play by what has been India's approach on foreign policy, that we are all one when it comes to foreign policy and defense. Unfortunately, they have been breaking that basic ethical route by trying to raise doubts about every work being done by the government. That can be a problem. If that not so, we could have overcome all these issues. And thirdly, economically, I think this alliance is going to very well. Alliance politics will not hurt this economic reforms, because the two biggest partners are all for reforms. Especially Chandrababu Naidu. They're pro-reforms, and they're going to see to it that this is carried out with full support.
True. Okay. Nachiketa Tiwari.
Yeah, so if you look at, Bharat in the global context, there are three challenges, and these challenges have not changed. On our west, we have Pakistan, and their eternal goal is to somehow destroy India in all meaningful ways, economically, culturally, and so on and so forth. So that is not going to change. If you look at China, what do they want? They want a weak India, which is subservient to China, economically as well as militarily. That is the thing. And when you look at the Western democracies, what would they like Bharat to be? They would, in modern geopolitical context, they would like Bharat to be economically strong, maybe civilizationally certainly not strong, and militarily somewhat, somewhere in the middle of it, so that India can toe the line of Western powers, so that it can work as a bulwark against the Chinese. Narendra Modi is there as the Prime Minister. He has 5 years. I do not think that the coalition politics will impair him to addressing Bharat's geopolitical needs and requirements. I don't think that will be a constraint. It is up to us how to figure out the solutions of these challenges which come from Pakistan, China, and the West. They have not changed. They're not going to change in future as well. And this government, if it puts its mind together, I think it can address these challenges and move ahead.
The fascinating conversation continues. We look at the road ahead for Bharat, what needs to be done when we come back. Stay with us. We've almost run out of time, but we'll stretch it by another 2 or 3 minutes. So a minute to every panelist now. You can pick one of the two. Will this government last 5 years and do its full term? Why do you think so? That's the first option. The second option is 5 things you want PM Modi to do, despite it being a coalition government. So you can pick any one and go for it, 60 seconds each, starting with Dr. Ranganathan.
Yes, the government will last 5 years because Modi has been pro-economic reforms, whatever shape they may come in, and in Chandrababu Naidu, he's got a very strong ally for that. Modi has been a status quoist as well as removing discrimination against Hindus are concerned, so he might not touch that. So he is going to be a stable, he's not going to take any tough decision in that sense. I have already given the long list of things I would want him to do, including removing all those egregious acts, but I don't think he's going to go for that. I fervently hope that the farm laws are brought in some shape or the other, because that is the one thing that needs to be done.
The agrarian distress cannot be addressed unless those laws could take shape via the state route, perhaps. Nachiketa Tiwari.
Okay, so I think that if Modi survives for another 6 to 9 months, this government will last for 5 years, because in these 6 to 9 months, they'll figure out ways to strengthen themselves and become insular to all other coalition pulls and pressures. In terms of what I would like them to focus on, essentially 2 or 3 important questions. One is, in whatever ways possible within the framework of coalition politics, we have to start having a serious national discourse on who are we and what do we as a country stand for. I mean, there's a lot of confusion and there are 20,000 answers to this single question. Second one, we should sincerely pursue this idea of Ram Raj, which is not just talking about Ram Mandir, but it has 3 components: justice, equality, and freedom. I mean, if you look at Ramcharitmanas, these are the 3 themes which come out. I think if we do these 2 things, I think we'll be fine.
Sushant Sareen.
Okay, I hope they last 5 years and are able to deliver on my 5-point wish list. And I'll very quickly tell you, I want economic reforms to be deepened. I want defense reforms to be hastened because I think they need to be much more realistic and allow people to express themselves freely, take in advice from all quarters. Don't limit yourself, in a kind of a bubble, because otherwise then you do things which do not actually work on the ground and cause a lot of political problems for you. That's the second. Number 3, please end this culture of psychophancy. It's been taken to ridiculous levels, and I'm not sure that Mr. Modi wants it. But, this is that Congress culture seeping into the BJP. You need to end it, because otherwise you will not get a proper feedback from ground up. Number 4, please reform your judiciary. You need judicial reforms. You need fast delivery of justice. You brought in 3 new acts, but you need to double down on it so that delivery of justice is fast, it's cheap, and it's available to everybody. And finally, please bring in some administrative reforms so that there is redressal of grievances on very small issues from which people have to spend months on end, including a guy like me who is not getting an electricity bill for the last 4 months. I have banged my head against the wall. I'm not getting it. So if I am suffering this, can you imagine what somebody who does not have my resources, what he might be suffering? Please bring in administrative reforms, both at the central level as well as the state level.
Ties in loosely with Nachiketa Tiwari's justice, equality, freedom, Ram Rajya, the original concept. Yes, final word, Ratan Shardaji. 60 seconds, have to wind up.
I'm very sure Modi ji will last 5 years. Reason is that if he can negotiate with the top world leaders, also difficult to negotiate, he can definitely negotiate with the alliance partners. Secondly, I have already given a list of 11 steps, but I will not pick up any cultural issue because I doubt how we will manage it. But I definitely want education to be handled in a much more proactive manner. The minister who becomes education minister should not believe that is a punishment posting. Books have not been changed for last 10 years. An entire generation has gone with the poisonous, books that are being used. NEP has to become a reality faster than they want to work on that. Secondly, irritants on growth engines, that typically MSME, exporters, all these people need removal of these irritants which where they want them to load with laws which still are so strong and so strict that they suffer. For example, pollution control law itself is such that any unit can be shut down, and the women, they keep on running around to get solution work. Then judiciary, of course, very important. And on education, I also want to say we must stop privatization. See, if you don't have the government schools, government colleges of high quality, where do you get new meritorious people who cannot go to private institutions? This open license to private institutions is something which must be addressed. I think that is very important for this poor country. And of course, health, where you need to work, and also admin reforms, definitely I go with them. These are the things I would like. And also split Supreme Court with multiple benches, go to south, go to east, so people don't have to come all the way to Delhi for any grievances.
Decentralize the Supreme Court, democratize and decentralize Supreme Court, just like the G20 was decentralized. Okay, 10 seconds, Sushant Sareen. Yes.
Just one sentence. And my unsolicited advice to Mr. Modi, that like Caesar used to have a guy standing on his back, constantly whispering in his ear, Caesar, you are mortal, right? Mr. Modi needs somebody like that, because the kind of psychophancy which is going on around him, I think is putting him into a bubble. He needs to get out of that.
Okay, fair point that is made. Fascinating conversation. There are so many things that we can take out of this 1 hour, 60 minute or a 60-minute conversation that we've had. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure speaking with all of you. Thank you so much. Namaste.